Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the MrWarrenHayes Show. I, of course, am MrWarrenHayes. It is special. It's out of the ordinary. It's not on our usual schedule, but there's a very, very significant reason for that because we have just been through, and when I say we, I mean all of us as wrestling fans who follow the stuff, we've been through a tumultuous year in regards to certain promotion, All Elite Wrestling, and we are just coming out of it. And I figured it might be interesting, might be a fun time to just take a moment to look back and give a state of where AEW is as of September 2023. See how things have progressed, changed, evolved. Use whatever adjective you want here. We'll be talking about it quite a bit. And when I say we, I'm not doing some weird speaking about myself in third person gimmick thing. No, I have a guest today. I am joined by one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungee podcast over on the Voices of Wrestling Network, and a fellow VOW contributor as well, Fred Morlan. Fred, nice to see you. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We were chatting about it a little bit. Fred. I'm going to give this to you though. I'm absolutely going to give you credit. You know,
do I need antibiotics after you give it to me, or?
Well, hopefully not.
Okay.
But so there's some things I just can't control. There's one thing that we were chatting and whatnot, and then one day Fred just pops into my DMs in our contributor Slack, whatever, and he said, "Hey, why don't you have me on your show?"
The best way to invite yourself.
So this is what it led to, and it was, and it was sort of like, hey, why don't we do like a bit of a state of the AEW and whatnot? But and it makes a lot of sense that outside the fact that you invited yourself onto the show, but it makes sense because your podcast is an AEW podcast. Why don't you tell my audience, my A+ audience, by the way, D-list podcast or A+ audience, why don't you let them know what the Good, the Bad, and the Hungee is all about?
Yeah, so The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee is a weekly AEW-centric podcast where myself and Tyler Forness get together and we talk about the week that was in AEW and cover the news and then, the shows as we have time for them, because sometimes a lot of things happen in AEW and then you just don't feel like talking about Collision or Rampage.
Yeah,
Rampage, often on the cutting room floor. But yeah, so we try to cover the big happenings, and sometimes there's a lot of big happenings when some people get up in their feelings, and so we just try to do a weekly look at everything that's going on in the company and look at what's coming up and where they're going, where they are.
And it's a podcast that I listen to. I used to, as if I stopped, but I listened to it before. I listened to it before becoming a contributor to VOW. I've always liked your stuff, and
thanks.
But the good part is with AEW, right? Like you sort of touched on it, is you never ran out of material.
No, thank God, I guess. I mean, I feel like CM Punk became a real curse down the road for us.
Sure, at the same time.
But, it also is fruitful, so there's that.
I mean, it's one of these things where your podcast, on a weekly basis just writes itself. You don't have to sit back and really think about what's going on.
I've had for 4 or 5 weeks now, I think. I've had on the show notes that I put together, I would like to talk about the VOW 30 under 30 project, and we haven't got to it yet.
That's right. Jeez, you talked about that 3 weeks ago. It's like, hey, maybe we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'd love to do that. I think this stuff is very interesting, and and then other things that we have to talk about happens. So,
well, look, the 30 over 30 at least under 30 over 30 under 30 at least is evergreen. I guess it's still topical.
True.
You can get to it at some point.
True.
But listen, this is what we're going to be doing. A bit of today. We're going to be in your wheelhouse, so to speak. We're going to be talking about AEW and everything. Sort of. Take a pause here. And just look at the state of things and give it our thoughts, our impressions, our analysis on how things have gone. And look, you've mentioned them. I mean, we're going to start with this. You cannot talk about I don't think we can realistically do what we want to do today without starting by talking about CM Punk, who got released, fired with cause. We're not going to go through the entire thing, folks. Don't get me wrong.
Both his contracts.
Yeah, exactly. You know, everyone has broken this down. This is not necessarily what we're going to do, but you know, he's gone from the company 2 days before the 1 year anniversary of the brawl out, the gripe bomb, as Suit likes to call it. Listen, I guess the question that I have here is, you know, what is his legacy, so to speak, in AEW? Like, what does CM Punk leave behind now that he's gone?
Well, most people are complicated, right? So, and some people are more complicated than others. And I think
putting it mildly,
yeah, to try to be nice, because look, the way the rate he was burning through fights, man, like, you know, I don't know if I'll get a knock on the door and it'll be like, what do my knuckles say? Drug free, and why are you here? But yeah, I mean, just what a absolutely astonishing kind of run he had. Less than 2 years. Definitely boosted business. Mm-hmm. Basically saw the movie Battle Royale and was like, that's a good idea. And
at least it was an Old Boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, might as well have been the Old Boy. I just saw that for the first time a week ago. Really? Might as well have been the hallway scene.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When you think of it.
Yeah. Just
except one guy has real, you know, one guy has a noble cause behind it. You know, the other guy's just paranoid.
Yeah. What a fascinating time to be alive and to follow this stupid story. And trying to explain this to non-wrestling fans every time has made me sound like I have severe issues. There's absolutely nothing that like this makes sense about. But yeah, he came back. He did great business for a while. That first like 6 months was gangbusters. Easily like the high point of AEW as a promotion, I think, in terms of popularity. And then one fan chanted Colt Cabana in Chicago, and I honestly like that's a joke post. You know, that's somebody memed that with the domino thing with like the one, and then you know him getting fired. But also, I'm not really sure it's a joke. It's one of those things where you're like, it's not wrong. I can't say it's wrong.
He's the most gotten to human on planet Earth. Let's be honest. You know, it's like
it's just really amazing to me, like how quickly we went from I'm really happy to be here. I love wrestling. I love these fans. I just genuinely am very happy to be here. To if I had enough napalm, I would have committed
an atrocity,
multiple crimes at this point.
But I'm with you, though. Like, on that point, I think it's important to underscore, because I've mentioned it a few times on my own podcast, and when he came back, he seemed happy, right?
Yeah.
He seemed light.
I don't know if I'd ever seen happy CM Punk before, right? Frankly.
And it all made, like, from a I guess, if we're talking stories here, but this, you know, we're not in a story, but from a character development point of view, he leaves a business that he loves for, like, almost a decade, right? And he leaves because he's sour about it. He hates the direction it's gone in.
Miserable.
You know? He's miserable. And then he comes back and he's essentially, you know, the Messiah coming home, because, you know, that one promo that he cut with, I think it was Hangman Page saying, you know, what you're doing here today is because I paved the road for this. He's not entirely wrong. You know, like,
right.
He does have a tremendous hand in that via his actions. So, you know, everyone was just like excited and looking forward to seeing what he was going to do. And he was, you know, saying he wanted to work with his first program was with one of the young guys, was with Darby. And then he's in the ring and he calls out Hook, you know, he says, send Hook, and everyone loses their mind. You know, it's like,
right.
You're like, this is great. This is great. And yet, and somewhere in the, you know, for those of us who are familiar with CM Punk over the years, we were like, okay, but I feel good about this, but when is it going to break? You know, our pessimism always sort of stayed there to a degree where we're like, this is really cool, but
it can't last forever.
How much has he changed? Well, we found out he hasn't changed quite not much. I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Now, like, I do want to like treat him like a human being and not just like a cartoon figure of just like the angriest person on the planet, like Lewis Black's character from Inside Out. Like I can totally 100% believe that there is stuff that annoyed him to hell and back about working with AEW,
Sure.
and I think that's perfectly reasonable. At the same time, I think that being 45 and seemingly wanting to start a fight every week is not normal. I'm not 40 yet, and like I just want to take a nap. So like maybe that's just me.
Thanks for coming, Fred.
Yeah, look, give me 20 minutes, I'll be back. But like, yeah, it's just wild to me that like it seemed like these last 3 months on his return was just a perpetual, like the old Undertaker wrapping up the knuckles, staring at Shawn Michaels menacingly. Only it's Nick Nemeth because he said he tweeted the softest man alive like 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm just like I can only imagine like if he didn't get fired, if they were like, well, we'll bring him back because he draws, like what that would have been like afterwards. Like just like I hate these mashed potatoes, wrapping the knuckles, going after catering. Like what's next, man? Because it's just it was like nothing. It was like just the most, I'm not going to say benign because it wasn't really benign, but like just beneath him stuff. Mm-hmm. That he seemed to like get all worked up about. And it's like, I don't know, man, like get a hobby. Stuff annoys me day to day, but I'm not like, kicking a hole in the wall every time stuff that happens. Yeah, I don't know. It's very, very interesting and kind of very sad too.
But you do make a good point where, it's, why was he always looking for a fight? Like, yeah, I think there's a point in every successful wrestler's career when they're really on the come up and they're doing really well, they have to fight. When I say fight, I'm not like actually fist fighting, but they have to fight for their spot, right? And
right, yeah, it's a struggle. You have to prove your worth,
Exactly. But it's CM Punk. If there is a guy whose spot is safe, like bulletproof, Teflon, whatever you want to, it's his spot. So if you have prelim wrestler Ryan Nemeth, tweeting out
a bad tweet joke about you,
78 characters, and you're going to go after him. Yeah. Like that's I don't think that's healthy behavior. I really don't.
It doesn't strike me as healthy either. And the Jack Perry thing, first of all, look, medically speaking, falling on broken glass is bad, I believe, is a pretty safe statement to say. I have mixed feelings about doing that because the lizard brain's like, yes, cool. But like, if you think about it logically, you're like, yeah, that's pretty dangerous, man. I don't know about that. But it got approved by AEW management, like on the one that was playing for Collision a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And, and then, CM Punk shuts it down and leaks that story to the media and is like, I thought he was trying to get off work. Because logically people were like, well, I got to get a week of vacation here. I guess I'll just
work an angle.
Yeah, well, I'll just stab myself with glass like a normal human being. Wrestlers are wrestlers. Yeah. But like, leaking that story when like there hadn't really been any Jack Perry drama, I think, in the news previously, and then we get Perry getting pissed about it being leaked. I would assume. It seems like a safe assumption. And so he mouths off to the camera at All In. And that's enough to set off CM Punk. Like, it's just the lightest stuff.
Sets him off to decide to do something about it minutes before
his match. Like, it's not even like, I'll have to take care of this later.
No, it's like, I have to do this right now, minutes before I go out to start the biggest professional wrestling show of all time. This is how I'm going to settle this at this specific moment right now.
Yeah. And also, let it spill over to management or whatever else happened to. I mean, what a story. Like all this stuff, like the mealy-mouthed Hangman Page promo about workers' rights that like everyone at the time except for Joe Lanza was like, well, that's a weird promo, and I'm instantly forgetting it because it's just kind of a mid promo, but like CM Punk's like, I gotta settle the score 18 times over. And I don't know, man. It's like, it's a very sad legacy to leave with, that you basically get brought back to what should have been your home base for the rest of your career.
Yep.
Your legacy could have been built 100% around it, and you would have been just treated like a hero,
Because he was treated like a hero when he came back. And, it's wild to think that the Elite at the, previous to him coming back, both on AEW television and on BTE, were doing CM Punk references. Were right and left. You had Kenny Omega coming out that one week with the Cookie Monster T-shirt, and stuff like that. It's crazy when you think that we're not all that far removed from all of this goodwill and this excitement, and now these people can't stand each other.
Like he comes back. Two of my favorite things. One is his return promo. He puts over Britt Baker, and by the end, she's either not allowed or doesn't want to go on Collision.
Yeah.
And then like there's someone dug up, I think, and posted on, I think it was Squared Circle, that the commentary bit from Punk doing commentary for the Jungle Boy match back when he was still Jungle Boy, and being like, if you have a problem with Jungle Boy, there's just something wrong with you.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see, crazy.
But what a story.
The path is nuts. How do you think that obviously the locker room, you get the impression, especially after All Out, that a lot of people feel liberated. I don't want to maybe say feel good, but feel liberated, feel free. This dark cloud that we always talk about is lifted. How do you feel this might affect the locker room even moving forward now? Cohesion? Do you think it might change the way things are operated? General thoughts.
I'd have to think that the vast majority of the locker room is relieved on some level. There's probably I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt because I don't talk to anyone. Again, I just want to nap. But 20 to 40% of the locker room are probably like, thank God, I've just been so exhausted with this. And he's gone. And then another 20, like the next, up to 80% are like, I'm just glad that this stupid stuff is over. Mm-hmm. And then there's going to be like the 10 or 20% that are sad to see him go, and I think it's pretty obvious who they are. Andrade publicly tweeting about how he still wants to have his match with him, and FTR doing little tributes to him after, All In, and Brody King being angry about it backstage, I guess, per reports. And there's probably some other people that are, like Ace Steel. Danhausen, I would have to think, not going to get pricey comic books anymore. Ace Steel, no longer employed. And I can't imagine why. Chomp. Allegedly.
Well, the guy's brought back, because again, you see all sorts of weird takes, but the guy is brought back specifically to produce CM Punk matches, right? That's why he's brought back, and he's not even allowed on the premises. It's like, no, brother, you do this over Zoom. Yeah. Why would you keep him? Like, what is the point of keeping him?
Honestly, it's shocking they brought him back in the first place to me, and apparently it was like a key sticking point in CM Punk agreeing to return.
One of the multiple accommodations.
Yeah. Accommodation Jones over here.
But you digress.
I digress. God bless Taz. What a weird commentator. I'm so glad he's happy now. Angry Taz was not fun in TNA, but like modern goofy Taz is just a joy.
He's a delight.
Anyways, but I digress literally. It's just, it's really astonishing to think about in totality. Because he did help AEW, but like honestly, I think that he actively undercut his own drawing power by the end of his run.
Sure.
Like significantly. And you always, I remember back in going back and reading about stuff in the late 90s and stuff. that you'd get deranged stuff like the infamous Hulk Hogan Observe This Brother promo in like 95 or whenever that was, and like 18 people watching knew what the Observer was, basically. Like, it wasn't significant. But like now everything is plastered all over the internet and everyone uses the internet. It's not like, 18, like a relatively small number had Prodigy or AOL or whatever. It's like a major part of it. So you just search CM Punk now and all you see is like fired, fight, etc. I think there was that just led to mass exhaustion, I think, with his nonsense. And I think the most damning thing was we had these shows in Chicago after he was fired. And granted, I think Tony Khan took a bullet before Collision by going out addressing the crowd for like the 10 minutes right before they went on the air to let them have their 10 minutes of hate, and for any that needed that, to vent on him. And but then like that show and the pay-per-view, like there was, I think, exactly one CM Punk chant that was audible. That was briefly after the Young Bucks entrance,
right
when it was kind of quiet, and that was it.
And Matt Jackson,
short-lived.
And Matt Jackson played into it, because he's a troll. That's what he does.
Sure.
That's fine. I think it's interesting, right? Because, well, first of all, I also think that it was very well managed on that front. Local heel Tony Khan, that's fine. Let's just do that. And I think it did subside a lot of frustrations moving forward. But then I think it's interesting that, CM Punk maybe has ended up, and this is just like pure speculation, maybe he has ended up spoiling his own base, right? I
think he has.
If the Chicago crowd is not like on its feet chanting CM Punk like they've done, like they did for years in WWE, if they don't do that in AEW for years to come,
the days after, like immediately the day of and after he's fired, I think all that's left is like the CM anon weirdos, like the people who are working their own stories in their heads about how
the conspiracies,
just the weird stuff that like isn't worth giving oxygen to. Like that's it, I think. And it's just wild to see that path, from the returning conquering hero to persona non grata.
Well, I mean, what more is there to say? I mean, I think that's and overall, let's say if we final thought this part of the discussion, I would assume that we both consider this to be a good thing for at least the development of AEW moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was an obvious benefit from bringing him in those initial 6 to 9 months before Brawl-In happened, when he was healthy. And then, honestly, my opinion, and maybe the numbers don't exactly bear this out, I guess, but to some extent, but I think that his appeal on his return this year, these last 3 months, were, I mean, obviously much smaller than initially, but I think they were going to run out pretty fast. Especially with all these stories coming out, I do think that was impacting things some. And anytime you have a guy like that in professional wrestling, it's always a trade-off thing, right? You got to consider the benefits of what are they adding, what are they drawing, what do they mean for my business, and what the baggage they bring with them. And even if we hadn't have had that ridiculous all-in incident, I think we were rapidly approaching the point where the baggage outweighed the benefits. And Tony Khan loved him. He was absolutely one of Tony Khan's favorite wrestlers. He was so excited when he was able to bring him in. And their viewpoints on what wrestling should be, I think, are pretty similar. So this whole theory that that Tony Khan hated him or anything is, I think at least before he's lunged at him per Dave Meltzer, but worse than lunging. But we don't have. They never told us exactly what that meant.
We said lunging, but we should have said something
worse.
Yeah.
But I won't tell you what. Dave Meltzer.
That's fantastic.
God bless him. I mean, I just, what can you say? It's the damn shame that the guy is built this way. It's part of why he was, had all the success he did and why he was good at certain things, but like he couldn't not do it away from, stuff that benefited his character, and it kind of overcame him, I think.
And it's a shame, because like you said, I think this could have been earlier. You said, this could have been his home base for the rest of his career. He really could have finished up a very complex legacy on a tremendous note.
Yeah, it would have been an absolute opportunity to have a positive. And now the comparison I would make, in a sense, he never had the personality issues, but like Oscar Robertson is, arguably maybe the greatest point guard in NBA history.
You'll have to give me some lore here because
sure. He played back.
I stopped watching the NBA when Charles Barkley was still playing. So,
well, he predated Barkley. He played back in the 60s and 70s, and he spent most of his career with the Cincinnati Royals, a team notable for not existing anymore. There's no basketball in Cincinnati. They later became the Sacramento Kings after maybe like 4 times. But you don't really talk about Oscar Robertson when you speak about the Sacramento Kings. So he's like this all-time basketball player, like top 10, 15 all-time, who just doesn't have a place to hang his hat, when it comes to like the regional discussions, and I think that there's kind of a similarity with CM Punk now where he's this all-time guy, at least in the 21st century. And, he's persona non grata at AEW and probably is not really welcome back at WWE. Now we could dive into the discussion of, Vince McMahon like loving to take guys back versus Triple H being the idiot son-in-law. So
doofus son-in-law, right?
Doofus son-in-law, yes, thank you. I stand corrected,
but still, because it's still a good line.
It's a good burial, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of very interesting and unfortunate, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm with you on that. And, the whole legacy thing makes it, it sucks. And because he wasn't completely in control of it. And, like I often said on my own show, and I'm not the only person who's like, I'm not going to pretend that this was like an original thought of mine. A lot of people were saying it, but after the brawl out last year, it was never a question of if he was going to scorch earth. It was a question of when. And I think if anything, we're a little shocked that it took less than a year or just about a year. I would have given him a little more time, but this is where we're at. But I also do believe along the same lines as you that the company is, I think that the company for its own growth is better off. I love the chaos. I love the chaos of backstage shenanigans in pro wrestling. I think
everyone loves it. I would do. Some people like it more than the actual wrestling.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's true. And so, but there is a fair contingent of people who absolutely hate it. But the minute that I start getting a little pissed at the chaos is when it starts affecting what I'm watching on a weekly basis. Yeah. And, because of everything that happened, a lot of my favorite wrestlers were suspended. A lot of things were thrown into the air. Tony started developing I had planned this, but things happened excuses, and that got really tiresome. So a lot of what was happening backstage was directly impacting how I was enjoying the product. And now I'm just glad that, at least for a while, we'll probably get some sort of normalcy until something else inevitably happens because it's pro wrestling. What do you want? I mean,
shit happens all the time.
Since we touched on it a little bit while we were talking about him coming back and the great business metrics that he brought in this past year for AEW business-wise is a bit of a weird one, depending on the metrics. I think, overall, it's probably fair to say that ratings have been stable as far as television goes. We're talking specifically for Dynamite, right? Because it's the flagship. Yeah. That's the one that's interesting.
That's the A show. I mean, Collision is still an A show. We'll see about that going forward. I hope it stays an A show.
It's still young. Like where we're about to get into that period too, where everyone is expecting the show to get slaughtered, right? So, I feel like these are discussions best reserved for even a couple of months still. But over the past year, nonetheless, with the programming that existed, the ratings have been pretty much around the same area. They've somewhere between 825 to 875, 900K, something like that.
So consistent, yeah.
They've been consistent. Pay-per-view buys have been consistent as well. No, they've not hit the highs of All Out 2021, but
they're not going to. Let's be frank about that. That's a once in a lifetime event, is the return of CM Punk to the ring, to pay-per-view. And that's not really a thing you can easily replicate. So I think anyone expecting that to be like the new baseline is, that's not how it works.
it's a little strange, you know. So pay-per-views have been very good because they've been very consistent as well in their.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel about the business of AEW over the past year? How do you feel it stands today? Because ticket sales. Here's what we forgot to mention though: ticket sales.
Mixed bag.
Not great though.
That's a mixed bag.
That's very much a mixed bag. You know, I'd say the average is about like around 3,500 to 4,000 per show. You know, let's say for Dynamites and so, which isn't necessarily great. We're tarping off a lot of stuff, and we've got shows coming up when we're recording. We're full disclosure. We're recording this on September 9th. This upcoming Dynamite still has less than 2,000 tickets distributed, according to WrestleTix. We're still like a little over 5,000 tickets for Arthur Ashe. Like that's
not good.
We can be looking at this and going, "Hey, that's fine." You know, those are disaster numbers. And it hasn't been. Look, the Canada shows were a mixed bag as well. Talk to me, Fred. What do you think about the business so far?
You know, it's you know, like we said, it's a mixed bag. Now I think Dave Meltzer's theory has always been that television ratings lag behind attendance, if I'm right on that. I think I'm recalling that correctly. And if that's the case, then that might be concerning for AEW. But the thing is, like, you know, the TV ratings for Dynamite are absolutely solid. Mm-hmm. Collision is going to get clubbed like baby seals, which you have experience with, Warren, and that's just going to be, I mean, because college football is just going to wreck it. Like, that's just the deal, right? I mean, mm-hmm. And there's going to be, again, we go back to CM Anon people that are going to be like, see, this is proof that, you know.
Yeah.
But like, it's just this, it's college football. It's, you know, it's like 18 games at the same time. It's not a surprise. It's exactly how, you know, these things were supposed to work. And it's not like okay, listen, most likely I'm not particularly impressed with the executives at Warner over the past year, but I'm still willing to bet that they aren't going to like open up the ratings after, you know, the first college football Collision this past week and be like, what happened? You know, they're going to be like, yeah, we baked this in. There's like a 5% chance they did it, but yeah, they probably were like, yeah, we expected this. This is just how we thought these numbers would go. And I don't even think CM Punk's presence would have really canceled that out. You know, maybe they would have been slightly better, but I don't think it's going to be like doubling. You know, it's just this is what it's going to be. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Because you know I'm not even sure that. And it's a shame because now, you know, I was excited for him to come back because one of the things that I was curious to see was his, you know, what kind of impact he could still have on the business, you know. Yes, the first Collision at the United Center drew a lot of people into the building because for multiple reasons, notwithstanding CM Punk finally coming back. But I'm not, you know, how quickly would we have fallen into the diminishing returns situation, which I think was inevitable when it comes to.
And I think we followed the timetable already. You know, I mean, the numbers were dropping off some. If you look at the graph that WrestleNomics did of attendances on a monthly basis for Collision, it dipped down to 4,000 last month per show on average, after being at 6,000 for Collision for its debut month. Not really a surprise. You
know, I've always had this impression. I've had this impression since his return that he's a name. He's a recognizable name. You know, he's not, you know, John Cena recognizable name or, you know, Dwayne Johnson recognizable name, but nonetheless. But I don't see specifically how he really did help. You know what I mean? Like, I can't point to a single metric over the past few weeks in regarding Collision and say, oh yeah, this is clearly the CM Punk effect, because tickets are around what Dynamite is doing. You know, it's like there's a couple of spikes here and there, but we're in the same boat kind of thing, the same kind of category, which sometimes leads me to believe, is AEW, to make a comparison, is AEW an ensemble cast?
I think so. I think at its best it is.
I agree too.
Honestly, creatively, I actually thought the last month of Collision prior to his removal from the roster was a very not unimpressive creative period for it, because what we got with the shows was, it felt very paint by numbers, like repetitive, because at that point the fairly small approved roster, air quotes, of people that would show up on Collision was like getting very repetitive. And I kind of feel the comparison I've made a couple times now, and I think even on the air, is it reminded me of the Simpsons episode where way back in the 90s, where the TV executives decided that they needed to liven Itchy and Scratchy up, and they added Poochie. And at some point they say, when Poochie's not on screen, all the other characters should be asking, "Hey, where's Poochie?" Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of what Collision had become, is like the Poochie show with CM Punk. And
interesting.
Every week for the last half hour of the show, we got ourselves a multi-man tag where CM Punk kind of leaned on FTR to do the heavy lifting in the match, and it was a very, what I think of as like a house show main event kind of match, which is a nice little enjoyable 3-star match. The guys hit their high spots, but they also keep themselves paced so they, their limbs don't fall off, and all that stuff. And it's just, over on Dynamite, you've got, just name any of the other better matches that they had where their guys were going much more closer to full, all out, like Darby Allin's like, yeah, I'll fall on that, sure, and the dichotomy is kind of, noticeable within the same company. All that said, I do hope that Collision keeps the different feel. I like that aspect of it. I'm not, I think not to dig too deep into the weeds here, I guess, but I think the Kevin Kelly and Nigel team is interesting. I think it could be good, but I think both still have to kind of tweak their work right now. If Nigel can move away from the Jesse Ventura heel commentator, imitation that, like, I think has been dead. If I could go like a full decade without ever happening again, like, it might be livened up again, but like, that's what it takes. It's just so played out, at this point. And Kevin Kelly, I think, still, he's used to doing New Japan often solo and just kind of doing his own pace, and it's just slightly different.
Yeah, I think Kevin Kelly, after all these years of doing, non-live television, just like
non-produced,
just talk, and it's one of his, it's one of the things that makes New Japan commentary, for me anyway, very, very approachable and enjoyable, because he's not trying to fill out every friggin' second with words like Michael Cole or sometimes Excalibur at his worst. It's like where we always have to be saying things. No, we don't. We can let things breathe.
And he was good at that in New Japan.
Yes.
I just needs to figure out like the right way to do that with American television.
Absolutely. Well, since we're talking a little bit about the creative aspects of it too, there's I think Collision was I think Collision was one of the bigger highs as far as creative goes, because you touched on it, and I think it's significant, the way the way it feels so different from Dynamite.
And that's good,
which is crucial, actually. You know, I think it's a tremendous boon, and it's something that I hope that what era are we entering? The Bryan Danielson era of Collision? Is this what we're the Jay White era?
I could go with that. Jay White, I'm always, I feel like they really underpushed him when they brought him in.
Yes.
And I think they're slowly kind of rectifying that. But I still,
he's super protected. Like right now, he is
very protected.
Super protected.
But he also, I don't know that he's really had a big win yet.
No.
You could point to the 8-man tag on All Out or whichever show, I forget.
All Out.
Oh, where they won, but like that didn't really feel like a big win for him.
Well, on
But
top of that,
he's
I think he Blade Runnered one of the guys, and I think it's Austin Gunn that got the pin.
yeah,
But,
I think so.
But
Yeah,
White set it up, kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, without my notes pulled up, I think that's right.
details.
Yeah, who cares? But yeah, like it's amazing to me because like honestly, if I had been what was slidered into Tony Khan's body the week after they signed Jay White, I would not have shut the hell up about it.
Yeah.
I would have been screaming about that everywhere. I would have had him come out and beat some top star that first week, or like have a big promo off with him to set up a big one next week. Like I would have hit the gas hard on that, and instead he came in very soft, like just, hey, it's Jay White, guys.
Hey, he's involved with Sean Spears, fellas.
Yeah. Get hype. And I do think that's kind of a weakness with Tony Khan, is like he doesn't like beating his guys, and that's in a way that's a good thing, but this is a double-edged sword. Like you don't, if you just start beating like Lance Archer every week, like that's not going to help out Lance Archer, right? But there's got to be a better solution than like just sending Lance Archer back to Texas for a year.
Sure.
My God, you got to be able to figure out something for Lance Archer. He's good,
Especially with 5 hours of programming. If you still have 2 hours of programming, then we can be like, yeah, you can't put everyone on TV. You got to be good. But
right.
You've got 5 hours of programming now.
But this isn't so much as like we can't use him to fill time. It's it's 100% Tony Khan doesn't want him to lose unless it matters, right? But like we aren't building to a situation where him losing would matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we just, and so often with Tony Khan, we just get these situations where you have a star, and it's like Hangman Page, right? He wasn't really doing anything for the past 6 months. Like he'd come out and like occasionally be part of these tag matches, but instead of being the company's protagonist, he's like the 4th or 5th most important guy in the matches.
Mm-hmm.
And he's fantastic. He's A+ wrestler, I think, like just a really fantastic worker,
tremendous charisma, relatable.
Crowd invested in him.
Like he's an easy layup as a babyface goes. It's
yeah,
like
100%.
Yeah,
and somehow it took until like this past week to start the Swerve program for him to feel like he was actually involved in anything after that, great Jon Moxley feud. And it's very frustrating. But this is kind of the Tony Khan playbook. I wrote an article a long time ago now on Voices of Wrestling, because everything feels like if it didn't happen in the past week, it happened 18 years ago. But I wrote an article about the Kyle O'Reilly, or I'm sorry, the Bobby Fish time in AEW, where they had, I want to say, God, I hope I can find this. I'm trying. They had like one straight tag match in the entire time that Red Dragon was there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, there was injury stuff. Like Kyle O'Reilly got hurt, and, sure, that'll affect stuff. I get that. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe use your wrestlers.
I'm a big, if you have the match, do it kind of thing. Like I'm one of those, where you have the match, just do it. Because, there's a lot of things that these are risks, and there's multiple, of course we have decades of WWE to look back on, not to necessarily go on bashing mode, but there have been multiple really good matches that they have sat on that that the fans wanted on top of that they're just not going to get now. One that a lot of fans really wanted was a 4 horsewomen match at WrestleMania.
Never got it,
and we're not going to get it.
No.
Imagine doing a Shield triple threat. That is a money match for WWE. And I mean contemporary Shield.
Yeah.
After they split, after they've all won world championships and have done their thing, and they're now all in their own respective way big guys in the company. You do a triple threat Shield match, like that would have driven tremendous attention, excitement. But again, we sat on it. Oh, it's not the right time. And then something happens, and now we're never going to get it. And that's, never having a Young Bucks Red Dragon match in AEW is preposterous. And
they were building to it. I get that, but at the same time, here I finally found my article. Here, would you like to guess the two? They had 2 straight televised tag matches in AEW in 2022. Would you like to guess their opponents? This is for Ray Dragon.
I would say the Acclaimed.
Nope.
No. Butcher Blade.
Nope.
Really? Okay. Who was around in 2020? In 2022.
March and April. One was a Rampage and one was a Dynamite.
So Rampage, it could have been just about anyone. They could have just slapped anyone together. It's probably like 2 singles guys, like Kip Sabian and someone else. Go ahead. I'm drawing blanks. I couldn't tell.
The Rampage match was the All-Star Tag Team of Alan Angels and 10.
Okay, well, all right, sure.
At least they had a bind, and like both guys don't suck. I'm just not trying to bury them. Like catching strays over here, Alan Angels, right? And then the April Dynamite match was Jurassic Express.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I remember that.
But they never had a straight match with the Lucha Bros, FTR, Acclaim, Swerve in Our Glory was still a thing then. Hobbs and Starks was a thing. House of Black, Private Party, even Ortiz and Santana. And then, they were in multi-man matches, but never had a straight tag with the Bucks or Best Friends or Reynolds and Silver. Like at that point, it's just crazy, that they, and going back to CM Punk, because we can't, we're pooching him at this point. But he never had a match with, like, think of all the money matches that were left on the table with him. Like Danielson would have been a big deal, with any level build. We never did get the Starks match. We were building to it obviously when we got like 18 Samoa Joe matches.
We never got the Omega match.
Never got the Omega match. We never got like there's just so many big stars here in the company that they could have put him against. And we did get the Moxley one, so we can't really complain about that. But like, Takeshita versus Punk, what would have that been like? He's finally getting the real elevation he needs. Or Malachi Black, I don't think we got, if I recall correctly. Apologies if Jericho, I don't think we got, which would have been a fun old man, versus old man match.
And the build would have been very interesting because that would have been full of meta references. That would have that just would have been wild.
But I think Jericho would have worked with them, even except for the month after all, Brawl Out that happened.
Chris Jericho is just one of these guys. He just, he smells the money, and he's just like, yeah, okay, this will work. Let's try this out. Anyway, it's a whole other discussion when it comes to Jericho too, and how he's being presented. But the, I guess, creatively speaking, I think from what we're gathering here, what we're putting together, and I'll even add a little on to that, is that there's a lot of missed opportunities because sometimes Tony likes to, and a lot of times, not just sometimes, a lot of times he likes to take his time, to sort of extract everything he can instead of just like, hey, let's just have a cool match, and I think part of that is because he is, and again, this is not an original thought. I know you share the same thought as me because we run in the same circles and whatnot. He's terminally online. He reads all the Twitter stuff. And so at some point, I do believe the AEW has no stories stuff
got to him.
It has got to him. So now he feels like every program has to be meaningful. But the thing is that, and we've seen it recently, even when he does create matches that have stories, the people who are in bad faith who do push that narrative still won't see the stories. Why is so-and-so having a title match? Well, son of a bitch. Just watch.
If you watch the show, you would know.
Watch the show. It's really simple, but
Jesse Collins has done a great bit on this on one of his shows, but like just the derangement of discussion around AEW is like one of the craziest things I've ever seen, because you would think that people would be able to recognize that even if you aren't a fan of AEW, that it's a benefit to the scene. It gives, another big money opportunities for wrestlers. It's creating jobs. people are able to actually have places to play off each other for negotiating power and all this. And instead we get these crazy takes that are just like, completely bonkers. And, there's some of that in the late 90s with the whole WCW, WWF stuff.
Sure.
But like, it felt different, I guess.
And I'll tell you why it was different, Fred, because there was an internet wrestling community back then. It wasn't just everyone being online like it is today. If you wanted to chat about wrestling, you would have to seek out places to do it. You'd have to open up your Netscape navigator or your Mosaic browser, and you'd have to find discussion forums. You'd have to find, you'd have to have a Prodigy account. That's the kind of shit you had to do. Whereas today, there is like, I agree when people say there is no internet wrestling community, because now it's just everyone's online. Everyone's online.
That's all it. Yeah, everyone uses the internet. There's some version of it on every social media platform. But it's just, it's kind of what a time to be alive.
That's putting it mildly.
But this is just Tony Khan just with his, when he's asked, you're like, hey, can we put these two stars in a match together?
Why is there what did you?
I got a denied stamp and I just remembered it. So.
Oh, okay.
That's the first time I've used it.
Did you get a piece of mail? Did you try to get published somewhere?
No, I just got to grab a random envelope I had and stamped it.
Because I'm familiar with.
I'm just popping myself at this point.
Okay, that's fine. Because I was like. Because I'm familiar with the world of publishing, right? And I was like, what kind of publisher, let's say, sends a rejection letter, and on the envelope stamps denied on, and I'm like, that would be so rough.
Whoever I would submit to, I'm sure. I don't know where they got this stamp that said "get the fuck out," but that seemed like an unnecessary expense.
But okay, so coming back to the creative aspects of it, the creative talk in regards to AEW. So it's a really weird dichotomy, because you have on one end Tony Khan, who goes, like we were talking about, goes a little maybe too long on some programs, but then some things are so slapdash, just things happening, being put together. It makes it like. It throttles the brain sometimes, where you're like, why we're taking all of our time here, but then this stuff is just like, a week before the pay-per-view, or we're going to set this up on the Rampage before All Out, or whatever,
I have to think there's some internal metrics that show that adding something at the last minute provides some kind of benefit. So I think that explains some of it. But also I think sometimes Tony Khan isn't the best at like he has the storylines drawn out in his head, and I think sometimes we only get like 80% of the storyline on air. So like that other 20% is there to him, but he's like connecting these dots and we don't see them on TV. And I think that's a problem we have once in a while with this promotion. And like he sometimes gets stuck on like a storyline that like there was like the Penelope Ford and the Bunny program that ran late 2021 to early 2022, where for a couple of weeks we had a women's deathmatch division. Which turned out to be pretty awesome. But like that storyline, I forget exactly who they were opposite at this point, but like it felt like it lasted 6 months. And we'll just periodically get one of those storylines that just goes forever. And then on the other side of it, it's like, we gotta do this Powerhouse Hobbs feud in 2 weeks. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very interesting, and not my favorite part of the company, but
and that's what that's what I find different. Like it's not as much as I'm bothered by quick builds to pay-per-views. I'm convinced Tony he's a numbers guy. He's always positioned himself as a numbers guy, and he hired Chris Harrington. There's a reason for that. He's a numbers guy, so I'm convinced he has the data to where he looks, let's say, just at the pay-per-views, and he goes, well, late buys, so that's where it is. It doesn't matter if we have, because the pattern that I've seen for him is like, we'll have one or two keystone matches for the pay-per-views that we are
You'll
going
invest
to
time in those.
significantly build to. The matches that I want you to that will captivate your imagination, right? That will be like, this is the one that we want to remember, and then we'll fill out the card as we go along. And I think, frankly, I think that's fair.
It makes sense.
Because the opposite is, because sometimes I feel like some wrestling fans are terribly unfair, where they feel like every feud has to be booked like a main event feud, but you're like third from the bottom, let's say. You shouldn't need that. You don't have to do that. Normally that match should be put together and you guys should be able to deliver you're a prelim match. You don't need tremendous hours of deep, rich, entangled storytelling. You just need to go out and have a good match.
I don't know that we really needed much more build for Samoa Joe and Shane Taylor.
Honestly, it's like
if we would have had like one more week of promos, would have been totally fine.
I guess, but ultimately that was great, and on the flip side, sometimes I feel, well, there's a couple of things in the company right now that, the creative is very, very different, and I think we have to talk about this, the sports entertainment aspects of pro wrestling leaking more and more into AEW. That's the thing. How do you feel about that overall, Fred?
Well, it felt kind of inevitable to some extent. Now, there's always been a touch of it in AEW, but it's not like
not new.
The dinner debonair. That's not exactly, Jim Crockett, or Mid-South popping through here. Bill Watts, like, God, I gotta, what show tune should I have Junkyard Dog sing this week?
Hey, let's go back a little more. You remember the Dark Order vignettes, where they were recruiting people out, for their cult that were all alone, typing on their computers or whatnot, and then it's not new.
No, and there's always been a touch of it, but it feels like we've gotten a lot more of it with the MJF stuff. And if you believe reports, which I don't have any reason not to, I'm sorry to go after your viewership like this, but he he's clearly a fan of a certain style of like WWF-ish storyline, and that's what we're getting with the Adam Cole thing. Now, there's absolutely one thing I've said, off and on about AEW is, I do like long-term storylines in this company, and you can have a little drama with them. The parts of the Better Than You Baby storyline that I've really disliked have been the pre-tapes.
Sure.
Where like just this really dumb humor that like is sub Adam Sandler, like low effort Adam Sandler even, are just kind of like, why am I watching this and what am I supposed to be getting out of this? Because like MJF, being like, oh no, my partner likes going to trampoline parks.
Oh no, he plays video games.
What a friggin' nerd.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, like it just doesn't do it for me. And then they'll turn around 5 minutes later in a commercial break later on the same show, and they'll have like a great in-ring promo segment. And I'll be like, why can't we just do this?
There you go.
You could have saved the time, like I don't need to see, oh, this water is actually alcohol at the Chinese restaurant. Whoa. Like,
yeah, no.
Watching Porky's 8, by accident. Are they going to go on a panty raid the next week?
Oh my God. Those are some formative films of the MrWarrenHayes youth, though.
I've actually never seen a Porky.
Honestly, you don't have
to. I would just be like, oh, I'm canceled for watching this.
I'm convinced they have aged so bad and in multiple ways, like from the cinematography all the way to the content. It's like, and the acting.
I would just from the little bit I know about them, I would be shocked if like I didn't turn myself into the police afterwards.
This was the kind of movie that me and my friends, we would go to the rental shop, to the video shop, and sort of go up to the cassette and then take it and then like go
try to hide it.
Yeah, then check it out and then run to whoever's parents weren't around so we could watch it kind of thing.
The
It was that
scandalous
kind of
movie.
film.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, the 80s. What won't you say that's in poor taste and is aged?
More than people realize, I think.
You know what I've heard about 3 times this year after never hearing about it? I'm going to stick on this subject because what the hell? Who cares about wrestling? It's stupid. Is the movie Soul Man? I've never seen it, but I watched the trailer for it, and just like the entire thing was just me going, no, oh no. Are you familiar with this movie?
I'm not quite. I'm not quite sure. Is this the one where the guy blackfaces the entire time?
Yes, it's 100% built around blackface.
Right. Okay.
And it's like, what if actually this is ethical? And I'm like, no.
I think Leslie Nielsen is in the movie, right?
C. Thomas Howe is the star.
Great career afterwards.
Oh boy. It's,
I'm just looking at it right now. Holy okay, like we've got James Earl Jones in this film and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like part of the storyline is that like I think it's Ray Don Chong's character who has to like get bamboozled into falling in love with him and like falls in love despite, not knowing the blackface or something. And I don't know, man. There's too much cocaine in the 80s, I think. It's too much.
Sure, that's definitely part of it. Product of its time. Holy crap! I'm just looking at the. All right, no.
Sorry to derail your show.
No, that's fine. That's
just giving you the full Fred Morlan experience. 2 weeks ago, I talked to Tyler about the Longaberger building on air.
Yes. Why don't you regale my listeners to the Longaberger building?
All right, so if you weren't around,
you wanted to purchase, by the way.
Yeah, which I mean, I will put forth $28 for the Longaberger company building. But yeah, that was an old company. I think it went defunct about a decade ago. But they used to make these wicker baskets that were really popular because there's always products like these that are just like super popular. Like, and you're like, why is this Yeti's coolers or whatever Lululemon for a while there, right? And they decided to build a new headquarters and, they were like, well, why don't we make it look like a wicker basket? So I strongly encourage anyone to go look at what that thing looks like. It's
fascinating.
It's amazing. I love just crazed buildings like this.
And now it's empty. Like it's inoccupied right now. It is open for business.
Yeah, you can buy it and do whatever you want in your giant basket. I love it. I love weird architecture like this.
You open up a bank. And you call it, all your eggs in one basket bank.
Put a Green Day museum in there and call it Basket Case.
There you go. So many things you can do.
All these successful business ideas that I will definitely make money off of. But yeah, novelty architecture is the best. I don't know why anyone ever talks to me.
You kidding? This is great stuff. What are we doing here? I mean, this is great. Well, we just between this and CM Punk, what is more refreshing? Let's be honest.
You could have took CM Punk out for a large picnic.
A very large picnic when you look at the size of the building. Yeah. You can stack a lot of food in there. Okay, so essentially coming again, if we sort of circle back on topic,
not destroy your show.
Listen, this is par for the course here. What are we talking? Ultimately, I think we feel that there's still there's some issues as far as creative goes, and it feels a little bit all over the place, and that and I think it is Joe who's mentioned this a couple of times. Joe Lanza, he said, it doesn't feel like there's a singular vision anymore.
No, it's kind of gone away from that, I think.
Yeah.
I think the top stars in the company have had much more influence than maybe 2021 they did. And there's some benefits and there's some negatives there. Like, I actually think some of the ideas and Collision, I think, had a lot of CM Punk ideas. I think some of them were good.
Sure.
If I'm being honest, like I love the intro promos they do. The little like 30-second promos or they hype up their match. I think that's a great way to start the show each week. I loved, while they still happened, the Mark Henry promos before the Rampage main event. I hate that they moved away from that, and now it's just like every third week it's just like a Mark Henry voiced over thing, and it's not the same. And like, that's having a little thing like that to just kind of hang the show's hat on. I mean, it's not like something that really determines if it's a great show or not, but having a consistent feel for a show and something that differentiates it from Dynamite, I think, is a really beneficial thing.
And when it comes to this idea of the singular vision, All Out this year is probably the first AEW show in a long time where I felt there was a singular vision.
Yeah, that felt like a real Tony Khan thing, I think.
And holy shit,
built around some other stuff.
And what a fantastic show. Like, one
of the best shows ever, I think, is fair to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the best pay-per-views of all time, North American pay-per-views of all time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Question.
The last 2.5 hours or whatever was phenomenal. Like, it just great match after great match, pretty much.
You know how you say, "Oh, we need a cool down match after."
You don't need a cool down match. We've kind of disproved that, like, for a long time with AEW pay-per-views now. But
the idea that you need a cool down match after a hot match. Look, maybe just continue giving great matches, fantastic performances, match after match in the match. The audience won't get exhausted. They'll just be all the more into it. I think we saw it.
I think what we've really learned, in my opinion, with the idea of the cool down match is what you're actually doing is just killing that match. When maybe as like the second match on the show, it would have been fine. But instead it's put in this death spot where, like, yeah, we know we can't, these two performers can't reach this level, and deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of doing like with what Claudio and Yuta and Kingston and Shibata did after the strap match, where you're like, oh, for real, because I think all of our collective reflex was, oh man,
good luck, suckers.
Good, yeah. It's like, whew, kind of sucks to suck, guys. Kind of thing.
And then they were like, well, what if we just beat the hell out of each other for 20 minutes?
Yeah, they're like, well, what if this match is great too, guys?
Yeah.
And it's like...
I'm interested in that idea. Please continue.
And, and specifically about the MJF stuff, I'm 100% completely with you. I've talked about it so many times on my on Tuesday nights. The fact that the fact that the pre-tapes are so awkward and not necessarily funny, and whereas everything else they do
is great,
just fantastic. You wonder why they need to do it in the first place. But then at the same time, I get really annoyed when the All In main event goes down the way it does. I am much more forgiving, I feel, than a lot of wrestling fans, especially the more pure wrestling fans. Whereas I don't mind hinges and tints of sports entertainment in my builds.
I grew up on the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
So, like,
see,
my brain's been poisoned.
There you go. On multiple fronts.
Yeah, by multiple things. So this is just one of them. Forever Plastics and Vince McMahon booking.
There you go. Well, where do you want? But the if you end up getting a great match, I will forgive so many things. I will. But I thought the main event to All In was abysmal. I hated it. I didn't hate it, but like it 100% hit a point where I was like, oh my god, like, it's pro wrestling. Like, I don't need you stabbing everyone with a spike every week, but like, you're telling me that, like, you're going to hit a pile driver and then do the "Why am I so violent?" Shawn Michaels trademark hand stare kind of thing. Like, that's just, it's wrestling. You're supposed to beat the other guy.
Yeah, it's just part of it. It's like, you don't see two guys go into an MMA fight and, like, one guy hits a big roundhouse kick and then just go.
So, oh my god, is he okay?
I guess it'd really be his foot, but I'm not that flexible.
Yeah, he doesn't go, oh, is he okay? He says, no. He jumps on him and pounds on him some more.
Now, I didn't mind there was a spot in the big MJF Cole match where, like, MJF was going to pile drive him on the table and then didn't, because it's like, oh, this is too far. like that's fine. I think that kind of spot actually works for me because it's like that's kind of outside the bounds of a normal match. Like it's not like obviously a DQ unless you're Jim Ross and Grumpy on commentary. But like, you know, it makes sense to me. I can follow that. But like this past week, you know, I kind of thought there was some of this too with the Darby Allin Nick Wayne match where, you know, the story was Darby was trying to wrestle clean with him, and like, you know, he wanted to win, but at the same time he didn't want to massacre his student, right? Makes sense. That's fine. But he climbs up for a coffin drop, which is just like a normal ass finisher, right? And then he's like, oh man, that's too much. But then the match ends when he grabs both his arms and stomps his skull to death. And I'm like, this is a Mortal Kombat move. I'm expecting an X-ray shot of his skull splintering. This is far worse.
The exact same thought I had is like the coffin drop. Is this no? You are
it's
stomping on the back
it's
of
a normal ass
head,
move, yeah.
And you're holding on to his wrist so he can't protect himself. Like,
yeah.
What is worse?
Yeah.
Darby, what's wrong?
I think this is a scene from American History X.
Yeah, pretty much.
And like, but like he wouldn't fall on him. Like that just killed me. And like I was like, this is a fine match. Like this is a solid match. And then they got to that. I was like, this is no longer a solid match.
And we really don't need.
Nah. I you know, there's ways to show this conflict that without like resorting to these over the top, you know, like I know you're playing to a big building, right? That makes sense. Yeah, I understand why it's kind of got to be big in a sense, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be like, why am I conflicted about doing this? Like, you don't need to do a mid-match promo. You know, you could have friggin' prime Marlon Brando out there doing the whole I could have been a contender speech from On the Waterfront, and it would still be terrifically out of place at a wrestling match. You know, like I don't need Darby grabbing the mic to tell Nick Wayne to fire up. Like you can do that without the mic. Yeah. I don't need the 98% of the time an in-match promo is not a benefit to me in my mind. And maybe I'm just old and crotchety and swiftly turning into dust and you know, and like the future is now old man and all that stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. But like it just doesn't seem like it's necessary or beneficial, you know, and that's my big hot take, I guess.
Well, it's not that much of a big hot take. I don't see how they, you know, I don't see what added to the match in that specific instance there. No, I don't quite see it either.
Yeah. But like, I'm not opposed to the underlying thing, but there's just got to be a better way to do it without like, you know, drama club time is kind of what it feels like. It's very frustrating.
I agree. How do you think the creative's gonna? How do you think the creative is shaping up moving forward? You know, if we want to use this as a milestone, a keystone moment here, our discussion, and you know, a point.
It's a big what. That's really interesting, I think, and I mean, I don't have a feel for it because again, no one talks to me. And that's, you know, again, refer to previous statements regarding desire for naps. But like, you know, we're probably still going to get more of this MJF stuff. Joe Lanza says that he's heard they have this planned out through December. And some of this stuff with the, like, I really thought that, you know, All In would have been the perfect turning point from like Act 1 to Act 2 of that story, or really, I guess, Act 2 to Act 3. Where it would have turned out that Adam Cole was planning a betrayal of MJF all along, and MJF got suckered in. And it felt like the obvious place where you would have had the big turn happen on the pre-show, so that everyone watching would have been like, "Oh damn! If I haven't paid, I need to pay now." Mm-hmm. I thought that would have been a layup of a way to bring in buys on this story. And there's no need for like, obviously the main event that night would not have been the conclusion of the story, whichever way you took it. You could have played it out for months and months afterwards, but it would have been like the kickoff to the closing stretch of the story. And the closing stretch could have been the second half of this year. That would have been fine. And so I don't know, like, you know, I don't want this to turn into the bloodline where it feels like every week we get the, you know, you're not loyal enough, Oos, you know, and, you know, like, you know, you could just turn it into like a Michael Cole soundboard and just be like, cousins, bloodline, head of the table, acknowledge me. And like it's just very paint by numbers. And I think what made that storyline really work was it changed when Sami Zayn came in and gave it life. And now we don't have Sami Zayn, we just have cousin Oos.
Sami Zayn, who
acknowledge me, I'm your brother.
Sami Zayn, who is now just another guy on the roster again, but
yeah. Well,
run podcast, but
it's a long time thing that that bookers have said for decades now. When you have two hot baby faces like you did with Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes, you just have to beat them and then not let them be near the main event for months and months. And that's called good business.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've
St.
seen
Louis,
this multiple times. Oh, yeah.
I call this the Don Owen because it was made famous. It was made famous in 1970s Portland.
Oh God! I think we've peaked. We should end the show right here. I think that
if you want to.
No, okay, but it's going to be interesting to see where they go with this, what they do moving forward. There's again, like I'm with you. I hope it doesn't become a bloodline. I was really hoping for story bumps. Like, you called it Act 3. I call them story bumps. But, we ended up ended with the story being exactly in the same place it was as when we came in.
And I'm concerned that this is going to stretch out.
And that's the trapping of the bloodline.
Right.
And that's the trapping.
You don't have points in the story,
And you are exactly in the same place that you were before going in. So what is the point, And it's not as if MJF and Adam Cole can't have a great match together. We saw one just a couple of months
ago. Dynamite.
Yep.
It was fantastic. As well. And then we didn't at all in my opinion.
I don't know. But there's that focus. I hope that there's talent that we like that are put where focus is returned to or put. We spoke about Adam Page, and I think the Swerve. Here's one thing. I think the Swerve Adam Page story that they've started is interesting because we were earlier we were saying Tony doesn't like his big guys to get beaten, but
they're going to have to beat one here.
Yeah, here's one where
this is how you use stars, right?
There you go. That's how
you have two stars, you put them in a storyline, you book it in a way where you don't embarrass either of them, you make them both look good, and then at the end of the storyline, at least one, if not both, have more momentum. It's kind of, and it's surprising when it's like, we better send Swerve Strickland. Like, we've set up as a big storyline with Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee, like they did, I think back in 1984 at this point. And, and then they're like, yes, okay, we've got the storyline set up. Let's not progress it.
Let's just leave it as such.
And that's another thing that's very frustrating. Is sometimes that just happens. Like, this is not the first time that Ricky Starks has felt super hot. Last year when he won the Battle Royal thing and then faced MJF, it felt like, all right, we're ready for a big Ricky Starks babyface push. Wow. And instead they're like, what if we just did it instead?
No, I don't necessarily agree, because then he was transitioned into a feud with Chris Jericho.
But like there was some point, maybe it was after that, where it felt like he just kind of went away for a while. Yes. After that, sorry, I got the timetable a little off. But like Ricky Starks has felt obviously like a superstar on the verge, like a guy that there's Rock comparisons and you don't cringe instantly at them. The guy is just like LA fantastic.
You're like, oh, come
where it's like the guy that says like there's just a little more meat on the bone with Ricky Starks, by which I mean a lot. And it just feels like all we need to do is give this guy a platform to become a star. And we felt oddly reticent to do that. Like we just, they haven't been willing to pull the trigger up until the CM Punk feud. And of course, that turned into the Bryan Danielson match, which was fantastic. But now I'm a little afraid that we're going to see another case of like Ricky Starks going into witness protection. Now, 5 hours a week of TV compared to 3, maybe that, that will help prevent that. But they do this sometimes. They get a guy heated up and then they're just like, well, take 3 months vacation, buddy. And you're like, this is the absolute wrong time.
They did it to one of the top. They did it to their arguably their ace, Adam Page.
Yeah.
After he defeats Jon Moxley, who is, king protected. Like, he's the king of protected wrestlers in AEW, right? He never fucking loses, and he loses to Page at Revolution, right up until this point was probably pay-per-view of the year in a tremendous match, and then poof, he's gone. Ricky Starks comes off of his program where he beat Chris Jericho twice, clean. Poof, he's gone.
Wardlow is, I don't know, fallen into a crevasse somewhere. After having, he lost some momentum when the whole MJF thing kind of fell apart. But he was still over. He was very over. And then they kind of put him in a middling TNT program. And now he's just God knows where.
And you can argue with Hobbs too. With Powerhouse Hobbs, it's a bit of a start-stop kind of situation where you're like
Hook a little bit, not as much, I think, but yeah, I mean, Hook is another example.
I understand because I don't think like he's a complete package yet. I don't.
He's not, but like I think after this Jack Perry promo, there's absolutely no doubt that he at least could be like a star of some level. He may not be like the guy down the road, but like he should at least be like oh hey, it's Hook.
One of these prelim acts that everyone is really excited to see. It's just what's going to happen. He's going to come in. He's going to suplex some people around, and he's going to use his dad's finisher, and then everything's going to be, and everyone's going to cheer and be happy, and no, I'm with you, and I think Hobbs is one of those as well. And it's interesting, Fred. Check out this segue because we're talking a lot about the guys.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't been talking a lot about the ladies of AEW. We're talking about people who've been mismanaged and better creative.
Do you mean hot? Do you mean their new character, Hot and Flexible?
H&F,
which I'm presuming is her ring name until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that too. But look, the women's division of AEW is a constant point of discussion amongst fans, and I myself, I'm a big women's wrestling proponent fan, and I've even got fatigued at pointing out the issues that the division has, and improvements and expectations, and AEW. I'm expressing my point, and I'll let you take it from there. AEW and still even this year AEW always seems to fall short of my expectations that they set for themselves when they started off, when they had Brandy coming out during those initial press conferences saying, we're going to build the best and the brightest women's division in the world, and you sort of get behind that, and they hire Britt Baker and they hire Kylie Rae, and they, of course,
Kylie Rae's is kind of a separate situation.
That's a whole other thing. But you get to this situation that despite having tremendous world-class talent in that division, we still seem to flounder. We still seem to be at a spot where the women are secondary and are afterthoughts to a degree. I was very hopeful that with an extra 2 hours of programming per week that we would get more than the women's quarter hour on each show, but that's still what we're getting. I don't feel like there's still to this day, and this is something that I've been hoping that they would change. Still to this day, I don't feel like there's really much opportunities for other than a handful of women to go out there and flex their creative muscle, their in-ring work, outside of 15 minutes to 17 minutes per week.
Yeah.
But then we'll get a main event and we'll pat Tony on the back and say, hey, look at the great things he's doing for women's wrestling. But then I don't know, like, to sum it up, I feel like it's the same thing with any pro wrestler, male or female. If the promoter gets behind it and makes you feel like someone is a big deal, the audience is gonna see them as a big deal. And I don't know why. there's such resistance to that.
It's the women's division has been very frustrating this year for AEW, and I think it's kind of, I think that you can point to failures at every level of the road for that, starting at talent evaluation.
Sure. Oh God, yes.
I think that honestly, it's kind of fair to point at some of the women getting pushed in AEW and saying, frankly, I don't think they're up to the standards of the rest of the show. And I think, there's, they've left some talent out there that they shouldn't have. First of all, they hyped their relationship with Tokyo Joshi Pro, early on. And so we got stuff like Maki Ito and Yuka Sakazaki. And we also had, not from Tokyo Joshi, but Ryo Mizunami come over for a bit. And then, granted, there was this pandemic thing. I don't know if you heard about it, Warren, but it was pretty big.
I think it was.
But yeah, I get why that would I get why that would disrupt things for a while. But like, we're now at the point where like most of the restrictions, even in a conservative with protections country like Japan, have been dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So Maki Ito is seemingly over in the States every other week or something for GCW. Yu Yamashita is getting work everywhere in the US, it seems. It's almost like she's in the States more than she is in Japan at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get either of them on AEW TV. Riho may have, you could tell me that she was, I don't know, that she's decided to leave wrestling and become a forest ranger. And I'd be like, yeah, I could believe that. She's just gone. Yeah. Nowhere, and she's fantastic, and like their first champion, and they're just like,
and someone the fans
love, like just a natural baby face immediately.
Yeah.
Yuka Sakazaki's great. Emi Sakura, I get why she's not pushed as like a cornerstone of the division, but like to have her make, I'm just guessing here, but like 3 televised appearances this calendar year, even just to not use her as like a jobber, like just like a regular appearance that loses 90% of her matches. I don't know why not. And there's other people we push, I don't know, I'm saying we, AEW pushes that are like, I don't know, I don't think they're like bringing, okay, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say that for her first few months in, Taya Valkyrie did a lot better than I thought she was going to do.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I don't think she's like a fantastic worker.
Mm-hmm.
She's like average-ish, but I actually think that she did well in the Jade feud. And then as soon as the Jade feud was over for her, it like just precipitous drop off, I thought. And then there's talent like Masha Slamovich that Impact got before AEW, and when you consider the resources those two companies work, that doesn't make any sense.
Zero sense.
Camille is an NWA,
she had one AEW appearance that one time with for the Empower show, popping up to stare down Layla Hirsch.
Yeah, and then we were like, no thanks. For some reason, it felt like, and it's like, and there's some injury stuff here too, but like Jade Cargill bulldozes everyone, eventually drops the belt, and then disappears forever. She needed some time off. I'm not going to complain about that. Like, I'm not even speaking personally. Like, her character needed to be off TV for a while after that. I get that 100%. It's starting to get to the point where it's like, well, what did we invest all that time in for? Something else. And to be frank, I think there's some concerns about her viability now that the streak's over. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like, I think she's charismatic. I think she does her character well, but I can't say that she's a great promo, because she really hasn't have to do like a real I'm a superstar promo thing. It's always, cut the crap, Tony, and then Mark Sterling talks for 4 minutes, right?
We know by observing her that she is very good at the backstage interviews, at the pre-tapes. She's a queen, but she's great. She struggles with the live crowd.
Yeah, and she's great. Her strongest point is that she is great at being Jade Cargill.
Yeah.
Like this character of like this
larger than life
superstar ass kicker woman. Yep. Fantastic, really good at being that. In the ring, she is hit or miss, kind of underplays it. She's hit or miss or miss. Like, like every once in a while you'll get a good mean gal match out of her, and then you'll just get like a lot of uninspired TV matches, and then Athena will be like, hey, kick me in the face 18 times, and it'll kind of rule, and then it won't happen again. Athena actually I think is one of their best women's performers, but she's stuck off in a Ring of Honor.
What a rehabilitation for her. Just ridiculous, from someone who was, who left WWE under the scope of being a bit of a joke, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
And then came into...
Well, look at Toni Storm, right? Went from pies in the face to one of the top stars. Now, I have a concern with Toni Storm's current character. I think it's fantastic. This may shock you, but I like movies. So, since I've referenced about 18, but she's doing like the whole Sunset Boulevard character, right? Norma Desmond, right? I think that's an
interesting reference. I was calling this her Joan Crawford era.
Yeah, something like that too. That's a fair one too. But it's a big vibes like that, and it's very interesting, and I enjoy it. But I don't know that this is like a top of the division kind of gimmick at the same time, and that's a concern I have. But it's also entertaining, so maybe I shouldn't worry about it.
Like right now, she's depressed because she doesn't have a title. Wait till she wins a title back,
Yeah,
and then.
And I like that we're finally doing the Outcasts breakup after what felt like way too long of just like we're menacing everyone. And that's the storyline, folks.
Since we're talking about like, a bit of the cornerstone, the women, I think we have to talk about Britt Baker.
Oh God, talk about getting stuck in neutral. This is maybe why it's good that people disappear on AEW TV, because Britt Baker is a great example of like kind of being stuck on TV for a year and getting nothing from it. I think is fair.
Okay, that's a fair assessment, but I'll go. Let me add this. Britt was the first woman breakout star of AEW. Like,
yes, 100%.
If you want to talk about someone who was made in AEW,
it was her,
without question, and
arguably their first star period. That they made themselves.
I agree with that. Yes, and she was a face of the company for a while. She got injured, and she still managed to be on TV and be absolutely phenomenal. And I think for some reason, audiences get weird and start developing resentments, and Tony Khan, being as online as he is, sees the Britt Baker hate, which I think is unwarranted and I do not understand. And he decides to pull the reins on her a little bit. I think he decides to pull her back, which is weird to me, because if there is one woman who can handle herself on the mic, look, let's just guess it, she's a fine worker, right? I don't think we'll sit here and say, she's a...
She bounces, I would say she bounces from like, really carried is wrong, but like she is lifted by her opponents, and yes. I don't think she's good enough to lift lesser opponents. So she bounces from like below average matches sometimes. Like the Ty Valkyrie one she had was honestly what I thought was a disaster.
I think so too.
But then she bounced like Thunder Rosa. That their first match was fantastic. Like I thought one of the best matches of that year period. And then their second match not as good, but still like good. So
she's one of these wrestlers who works to the level of their opponent, right?
Yeah.
And I think, but you can scooch by in wrestling, and when I say scooch by, I mean you can make a career off of just being a fantastic promo.
Yeah,
and that is the skill that she has developed over the time. Ever since she got her heel persona, she's become she elevated herself because of that, because of her personality, and that's how she became larger than life in this company.
Yeah.
In a division right now that is not necessarily filled with great mic workers, right?
No, right.
With people who are capable, but maybe can't necessarily carry the showmanship, the
personality,
the personality part of it. Thank you. Britt is a solid value here. And maybe not the Britt, but the Jamie Hayter injury, maybe that threw some things, awry on her side as well. But I don't understand why Britt Baker isn't on television more, why she isn't cutting promos every other week, why she doesn't have mini feuds. This, to me, this is someone you always want to keep on television because I think people legitimately like her work. Outside of the weirdos on Twitter who get to Tony, I don't understand this Britt Baker effect that she always buries her opponents. It's always about Britt. The division hasn't been about Britt for months.
Yeah.
And I think it's time for the division to come back to being about Britt because I feel that's when it's at its best.
What I think is the most damning thing about her current role in AEW is I can't even recall the last time she cut a promo that felt like it had a bite to it and felt like she had something that she was building to specifically, instead of just like, I have a match later tonight or I have a match next week. Like there hasn't been a Britt Baker storyline in a long time. And I think her promos need it to be part of something bigger for them to really be good. And instead we're just getting these kind of, middle of the road Britt Baker promos, which are still pretty entertaining, but it's just like, let's hit the high notes. I'm calling out insert name. I am going to beat you. DMD. I have a sparkly jacket. And it feels like we've really just like kind of, there's nothing else there. And,
I know, and I'm with you because there's the opposite situation is that once you run through everyone, what's left, and I think that might be part of the equation here as well. But in a company that values great promos, where you have some of the best promo workers in all of pro wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Working under your banner.
AEW secretly a promo company.
Exactly. T-shirts first, then promos.
Yes.
You have a woman who can live up to those standards. And there's not a lot.
Yeah.
Toni Storm, her character is great, but Toni will never be renowned for her excellent promo work.
It's not the strongest point of her game.
No.
For sure.
I think they expected that out of Saraya when they brought her in.
I don't think it's really worked out yet, but yeah.
Women like Jamie Hayter, like Riho, like Willow Nightingale got themselves over by their in-ring, not because of their promo work, right? There's one woman who can carry that flag, who can.
It's Britt.
It's Britt. And to me, it's fascinating that she's not the center of attention.
Yeah, or close to it. She's kind of in that, where Hikaru Shida was for a long time and might be rapidly going back to, like that. The instead of being a central part of the division, is kind of out in that first loop of it. That's just kind of hanging out, waiting to get pulled in.
Which is fine because you should be warming people up instead of doing four ways to create number one contenders, right?
The prestigious history of the women's four-way.
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly,
I had to get that in there. Look, when you've got to call back to a house show in Corbin, Kentucky, you've just got to. We all know and love it. But yeah, like I fully agree that Britt Baker has been surprising, and I feel like she's kind of underperformed because she hasn't been given an opportunity to really overperform or just perform, period. And I think I could keep going up and down this list, and I kind of have a personal running joke that like Nyla Rose is the Kane of the women's division, because for a long time in WWE, whenever they had a new champion, they're like, who should be the first challenger? Fuck it, I guess it's Kane.
Yeah.
And it kind of became Nyla's role is, we got a new face champion. Who's going to face her in the first title defense? Got Nyla. I think Nyla has, here's the thing with Nyla is she is like absolutely one of the best people in wrestling on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like tremendously and consistently funny on there, and she has never once really had the opportunity to show that on AEW TV, and that's just baffling to me.
A smidge when she feuded with Jade, you remember?
Yeah,
that?
a little bit,
little smidge where you were like, okay, Twitter Nyla Rose is
kind of came out there for a little touch there, but like I think it's amazing to me. Like we even beyond that, I should say even including that, like we've never really got Twitter Nyla Rose as a personality.
No.
And not even on like BTE. like she did 3 things on there and then like disappeared completely, and that's kind of wild to me.
The nun stuff was garbage though. That
Oh,
was
I forgot about that. That was up there with like the Nick Nemeth milk stuff.
I'd forgotten about that.
Are you worried that maybe woke up a secret fetish in some people out there?
Yeah, probably.
Maybe he should be worried about that. But yeah, like you just look at the roster here, and there's some, like Chris Statlander is pretty solid, I think. I don't know if she's going to reach the heights that we thought maybe she would when she first debuted with AEW. Like maybe this is as good as it gets, and if that's the case, that's all right. But like Layla Gray, I don't think Julia Hart as an in-ring person is really going to be
she's
viable.
She's super
she's
young,
so young,
maybe.
Yeah,
yeah. But like when you've got people like, and I understand Jamie Hayter's out, but you have Willow Nightingale. Who is who can work and is over as hell.
Yeah.
When you could essentially call back Athena anytime you wanted, you could. It's your company. You can bring her back anytime you wanted. There's so many elements here that I feel just not enough attention is being paid to. It's one thing amongst many that's not being paid attention to, in regards to AEW. And I kind of feel, Fred, that the tag team division is one of those, and I think it's especially glaring when AEW started, when it was doing its grassroots movement at the start.
Yeah.
When they were promising that this would be the home for tag team wrestling, and they had hired
that it'd be equal footing of the singles title,
exactly, and that it had main event pay-per-views, and they brought in the tag teams to match, to where you're like, oh, we've got the Lucha Bros, we've got the Lucha Bros, we've got of course the Bucks, we brought in Pride and Powerful out of nowhere, dragged them out of Impact, and when they were at fantastic debut, and people were excited about it, for whatever it turned out to be. The Super Smash Bros were always a great tag team. So, and
FTR shortly thereafter,
and there's always, and now we have Aussie Open, arguably one of the greatest tag teams in the world right now.
Aussie Open's great. I could talk to you for half an hour about how they've been booked the past month.
Oh, well, you see here, so ergo the point of the tag team division, I feel, has been something that has been left a little, that's been tossed a little aside. I don't think it's at the heights, not only that we were promised that, but even that it was at one time as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say that up through 2021, I think is a fair cutoff sometime in that year, the second half of it, that the tag division in AEW felt like it honestly could reach like main event level at its best with properly developed stories. And despite, like you've had the growth of the Acclaimed, and you've had other teams develop and everything, and I feel like that's not really the case anymore. We kind of did, not fully, but it's along the same lines, the old Vince McMahon, let's have the single star beat with the tag champs at the same time, just to really show how dominant that single star is. But obviously that just kills the tag division, because now your champions are dorks. And we didn't quite do that, but we kind of did with the MJF Cole stuff with Aussie Open, who, I mean, look, like Kyle Fletcher, I think is fantastic. A great young prospect.
Yes.
He could potentially be like a superstar. I don't think they killed him dead or anything, but the way Aussie Open looked in that Better Than You, right? Baby, they look like geeks of the highest order.
Mm-hmm.
And AEW has slow played some prospects before, but they never made them look like geeks. Like Konosuke Takeshita was, he had a bunch of high profile matches as a babyface in AEW, and he lost a lot of them, like virtually all of them.
Most of them.
But the point of those matches was to show he was virtually on their level. It was just a matter of time before he started winning these big matches that he was highly competitive in. Kyle Fletcher got kangaroo kicked. We are not the same. kind of thing. And it's damaging, and it's not. It'd be a different thing if this happened to Brandon Cutler, whose character is a geek and will always be a geek.
Yeah.
And maybe once in a while he'll be the geek that tries to stand up for his friends and gets brutally murdered by John Moxley.
Which is cool, by the way.
Yeah, that worked great. Fantastic. That was fantastic. I actually thought that was great booking. But like, he's Brandon Cutler, and he's always going to be that. He's always going to be the guy in the ridiculous jumpsuit hanging out with the Bucks. Kyle Fletcher could potentially be a money draw in this business, and I don't think he was killed by it, but I definitely don't think it's beneficial for him to get made to look like a high level dork by a top baby face for a few weeks. It's not good.
I've heard, I guess it's headcanon at this point, that once Will Ospreay arrives and the United Empire, sort of takes root in AEW, then Aussie Open are going to be fine. But then it's like, yeah, but in the meantime. Yeah,
it's kind of like, let me give you a hot take. Maybe they could be fine now and also be fine in the future.
What?
Yeah. Don't want to put the hot takes out there too much, but like, you could have done a kangaroo kick to, or called it something different, obviously, a Canadian kick to Sean Spears. And, Sean Spears is always...
I take offense to that. Canadian kicks. What does that even mean?
Oh, moose kick. Moose kick it. But like, it's just, you got to be smart about who you treat like a dork.
Right? I agree.
There's a place in wrestling for dorks, but like, your dorks aren't going to draw money, and if you're a dork at one point in time, especially for an extended period of time, you can't, it kind of kills your value, unfortunately.
And I do believe we have to be careful with Kyle Fletcher in this type of presentation, because he's over in the UK, he's over in wherever he's wrestled, he's been over, but they haven't been kangaroo kicked and so on and so forth. I think that, look, I just think the tag team division is in a weird place.
Yeah, it is 100%. The trios too. Like the trios belt is now. We went from like a mediocre. We really went from a fantastic, Young Bucks Death Triangle feud to a pretty mediocre House of Black, run where it was like, we got house rules and also disqualifications are part of the game. And then you'd have the babyface come in and we'll be like, we banned Julia Hart, or
twice. It happened twice on two different matches. I'm like
that was a decent idea that like could have used a little more time in the
what? Because look, here's what I'm thinking, right? Let's make this interesting. Let's make this spicy. What if I'm going into a trios match? I'm like, yeah, we're banning Brody King from tagging in more than once. How about that? There's your stipulation.
Right.
That makes it interesting.
Like you could have come up with something, interesting, and instead it was just like no countouts, or no tags, and it quickly revealed its limits, and then we just had the Van Gogh lighting.
That's pretty much it. So for me, it's something. Look, maybe moving forward with a rejuvenated, refreshed Young Bucks team.
Yeah,
maybe we'll get back to some levels of glory that the division once had. FTR is still,
FTR is still great.
They're still great regardless of all the little stuff that happens around them that will accompany them forever at this point. They're still a great tag team.
I guess I should say, as long as they are not in jail, FTR is great.
And as long as they're avoiding incarceration, they're fantastic. Yeah. And look, Aussie Open is still despite how they're being treated right now, it's a significant signing. They're tremendous. The Acclaimed have they've improved. I don't think they're any top tag team work wise, but I think Anthony Bones.
How would you know though?
Upside,
How would you know with them right now though? Because the booking with them is entirely shtick, and like the shtick works. So like I'm not against it or anything. It's a fine mid card act, but like that's 100% where the belt is, and the level it's at right now is, Billy Gunn's a third of the team, and I mean, God bless him for being in that shape at his age.
Exactly. That you've summed it up. And you still have the Lucha Bros who are around. You've got, you can bring up the Gates of Agony if you ever want to.
They rule, by the way.
Absolutely fantastic.
Give me some big meat going around.
I love how, is it Toa Liona, right? Who's turned into a wild man. Like, he's embraced the wild man, and I think that's
and Brian Cage is a power and paint guy that rules too. I'm seriously, like, he needs the arm tassels. He needs to, like, embrace the arm tassels on the big biceps to just, like, go further into it.
I think there's more. Basically, what I'm saying is that I think there's more room to grow for the tag team division, which I feel was really set aside, whereas it was a defining. Look, there's a lot of discussion recently about how AEW can remain distinct from the other company, and I think focusing on tag team action is absolutely the one.
I think that would help them a lot. Yeah. And they've kind of moved away from that. And a lot of their feuds. Look, I think the Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, the Satnam Singh, them, all those guys are very enjoyable in their bit. This is absolutely not a burial of them, but I do think they're kind of getting towards the end of the run, in terms of, like, I think maybe they're approaching the point where you're like, okay, you've done your part. Thank you for your service. And unfortunately, part of them being a prominent part of the division means that the match quality isn't there. The classic AEW great tag and trios matches aren't going to be part of the show because, like, I mean, Jay Lethal's Mr. 3.5 stars, and Jeff Jarrett is what he is at his age, and Satnam Singh is large and well dressed. Unfortunately, being well dressed doesn't really help your match quality, really. So just ask Nick Aldis. Yeah, it's very reason.
Yeah, you can wear all the suits you want. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Listen, Fred, to wrap this up, let's say, and it might be, if we were to point to one thing that over the past year, the past years anyway, at this point in time, something that AEW is very good at, excels at, and something that it's very bad at, could be something we've already talked about.
Sure.
What would you say? AEW
will always be great at match quality and always be great at pay-per-views. The build of the pay-per-views may be suspect. And it's kind of, I think it's kind of funny what happened after, I think it was the second one after All Out, where Anthony Bowens and John Silver got on Twitter and just started telling people to shut the hell up. And I mean, granted, that was a fantastic show. So, like, go off. But at the same time, like, no one was wrong when they said, I don't know about the build to the show. Like, those two things are distinct. Like, you can still say the path here was kind of rough. Some of the matches could have been built better. Like, I think the whole FTR Young Bucks build was very mid. Essentially, like, their sit down interview, I don't think really added any juice to it. And the whole we're friends now, oh, here comes Jay White to, like, be 1,000 times more interesting than us just being babyface pals. I don't think that really gave much juice to whatever storyline they're going to continue between those two teams. But it's the Young Bucks and FTR, and even if I think that was their worst match, which I do, like, their worst match is like 4+ stars. Yes. Still great. AEW will always deliver with match quality. And you can go up and down this card, and I could, like, nitpick some of the build. We already went over Better Than You, Baby, and some of the flaws with that story in my mind. Bryan Danielson and Ricky Starks was as good of a build as you can get in 24 hours. I mean, that was, it's not really fair to criticize that one, but they did the best they could, and then they just slapped each other in the face with a leather strap, and it ruled. The main event, Orange Cassidy, you could be like, maybe they should have built, like, Jon Moxley as the more obvious contender for a few more weeks out. But frankly, we had the storyline for practically a year of Orange Cassidy defending this belt all the time. And slowly his body is betraying him, and then John Moxley is the next challenger, and he's just like, I like murdering people, and you look weak right now. And that's what the match was, and it was fantastic. You could say maybe Takeshita and Don Callis peaked a few weeks ago, and like they kind of lost focus on them, and that kind of hurt. And the segment where Omega gets jumped by Bullet Club kind of distracted from that feud a little bit, while Jim Ross stood there like a Tim Robinson character. And we're all looking for the guy that did the slobber knocker. And you can point at some of these things and be like, I wish it was a little better, but you absolutely can't point at that show and say it was a shortcoming as a product. And I think that the buys of that show 1 week after All In shows that they're ready for monthly pay-per-views, and I think we are going to have monthly pay-per-views going forward. I think that's that's inevitable. That's the transition. We have them now. We have a show in October, yep. We have a show in November, and we have a show in December. And I think we're just going to get those 12 a year. And they may lose some buys on a monthly basis. Maybe those pay-per-view numbers will never be quite as high as they were when it was just the 4 year. But frankly, I think they're going to still hit high enough buys where they're making money over, hand over fist.
I think so too.
And this is going to be the right financial move. And I'm not really super excited to be paying $600 a year to watch AEW. But I'll do it. One, because I have the podcast, The Good and the Bad and the Hungee, on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. But two, because it's I know how to plug things. I'm good at this. But two, because I like the promotion, and the shows will probably be damn good. For the most part. So
I think that's AEW's main strength, quite frankly. Yes. I think I'm in agreement with you. I think match quality, show quality is, you never bet against an AEW show. You just don't.
Yeah. Not until proven wrong. And we're going to have a few stinkers in a row to actually, for me to feel like it's not a safe bet, but it's the safest bet in the world right now.
We're really at a point, we're really at like 2017, 2018 NXT takeovers where it's like, you don't, you just sit down, you watch it, you pop the whole way and you go home happy.
Oh yeah. Or the peak of the Okada Tanahashi New Japan era.
Those are two fairly good comps, I believe.
Like the big shows are just they're gonna rule, and that's it.
And that's it. Yeah, and you can have quibbles as much as you want for the builds and the weekly shows, but when it matters, you're just gonna have a fantastic wrestling show.
Yes.
And I think if there's one thing that I will continue to criticize, even though again, like I said, it gets exhausting, and I know it opens up a whole can of worms and maybe not the most brilliant discourse in the world, but I really want to see love and care and attention given to the women's division. I think it's been a shortcoming.
I think that's been a shortcoming. I do point a little bit at the talent level in there. It's not that they don't have good women performers. It's that it's not as obviously strong as the men side is one problem.
Because I think that the when it drops off, the men, when it drops off, you go, that's not so. It's still not so bad, but for the women, the real drop off, it drops.
Yeah, like for the men's division to drop off to this match probably won't be good level. You have to get down to like the guys that are dark only. You have to be like, I don't know, the deathmatch legend Luther is really going to be putting out bangers.
Pretty much.
For the women's division, you don't have to get as far down. Like the performers that I think are not really up to snuff in ring are still getting like semi-regular TV appearances, and I think that's kind of defining the depth issue with the women's division.
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of very questionable decisions where you're like, look, we got to stop this and go back to the drawing board kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think there's just and in complete honesty, it's not even a question to be fair. And I've talked about it as well. It's like, I'm harping on AEW, but I also think that this is a generalized problem. I don't think there's any promotion right now in North America that's doing their women's division well. particularly well. I think there's more shortcomings everywhere. And I don't want it. I don't want this to be a cop out. Au contraire, I'm like, well, here's an opportunity once again to differentiate your product, make it stand out. Here's another opportunity right here. You just have to clasp on it and push your right women, Britt Baker. So, on that note, Fred, we are going to wrap it up. You know, I had told you 90 minutes. We're 2 hours in. That's usually
when I get to work in the Longaberger building, like that's an extra half hour right there.
There you go. We got to compensate, you know, and no, we're not cutting it out. Fred, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
This was a lot of fun, very insightful. One more time, let all the listeners, the viewers, know where they can find you.
I am a co-host of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee on the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. It's their weekly AEW pay-per-view show. Pay me, please. Podcast where we discuss what is going on in the second biggest promotion in the United States and arguably the world. And I think the most interesting one. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Blue Sky, Flagrant Stats at bsky.social. It's such a weird platform. It's very strange. But I'm done with Twitter. So Twitter sucks and it can hit the bricks. I occasionally post on there about wrestling and then I retweet crap. And then like every month I do my best matches I saw in the previous month and just, you know, give you my star ratings. And I don't know.
I mean, that's fantastic. Like I'm just letting you go.
I'm very good at plugs, as you can tell. And you can just see the weird stuff that entertains me on there. And I don't know. Yeah, and listen to my podcast.
Listen to the podcast. Him and Tyler do a fantastic weekly job. You can trust me on that. It's very enjoyable. They cover a lot of stuff. And they're both of them are going to be very happy that they won't have to talk about CM Punk for a while.
We'll see. Maybe a week.
Would
you be shocked if on Tuesday like there's 18 stories about legal filings or something?
God no! What are we talking about?
It feels like just an inevitability at this point. Again, there's going to be more.
It's not a question of if; it's a question of when. What do we?
Yeah.
But look, we said we were wrapping this up. So very quickly, if there's one thing, the difference, let's say, between CM Punk today going after AEW is that, you know, this is a billion, you know, the Khans are billionaires.
Yeah.
They can they can milk him, and then Punk will not have a Colt Cabana to fall back on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a viable legal strategy in the United States is to just be rich and to just drag it out so the other guy has to pay a bunch of money in legal fees. And CM Punk is a professional wrestler that has made some good money over the years, and the Khans are billionaires, and that's a pretty big difference.
He's made good money. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's made good money, but he hasn't made billionaire good money.
Yeah. I mean, he should be, one would hope he's well off for the rest of his life. He can just hang out with Larry and have his best life.
And AJ and just enjoy themselves. Just write comic books about the thing again. Yeah. It's fine. You know,
yeah. Anyway. Just go to the beach, or I mean, you can go to any beach because you're pretty wealthy. You know, just invest your money well and just be happy and not fight Nick Nemeth, which feels below so many people.
Thank you very much, Fred, for taking the time to join me today. This was
thanks for having me,
and I really appreciate it. And it was good. Lots of great stuff we got to touch on. Of course, it's for me. Well, you all know the deal here. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, likes and subscribes, please. Those would be great. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast application, well, ratings on Spotify, reviews on Apple Podcasts help tremendously grow the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Appreciate it a great deal. And I'll see you next time.
Adios.